In today's video, I'm going to show you 7 curiosities about Civirevival that they haven't told you. Things that will change the way you see the game. I'm Mary, and stay with me because the video is about to start. Procedural generation isn't just a side seasoning in Civirevival. It's the heart of the game, and that totally changes the feeling of starting a new campaign. In the official description itself, they emphasize procedural galaxies and endlessly procedural maps, making it clear that the idea is for every playthrough to throw you into a truly different scenario. When a 4X game with an RPG soul embraces this so centrally, I feel like exploration becomes a good addiction. You never have that confidence of, I already know where this is going. Every star map, every system, and every new world seems to provoke you to read the terrain all over again, as if the game is constantly reminding you that you aren't in total control. And then comes the part I particularly love and hate at the same time. Procedurally generated resources, cultures, and threats mean your priorities change on the fly. There are runs where you'll be a diplomatic empire because the board favored it, and there are runs where the universe simply pushes you into survival and improvisation mode. In the end, this kind of well-done procedural generation gives that sense of emergent storytelling that I always look for in a sci-fi strategy game. You aren't repeating a script, you are reacting to a cosmos that doesn't seem to care about your perfect plan. And precisely because of that, every victory or disaster feels more personal. I like this choice because it cuts out one of the most tiring rituals of 4X games, that blind fog of war that forces you to stumble around the map until you hit something interesting. Civirevival is listed on Steam, so you can understand the kind of proposal it wants to deliver right away, one much more focused on exploration with tools and planning than on random wandering. The clever move here is swapping the traditional fog for a long-range sensor system tied to science ships. In practice, I feel this transforms exploration into information gathering. You aren't just moving to see what happens, you are collecting signals and choosing where it's worth spending time and taking risks. To me, this gives exploration a vibe of an expedition rather than tourism. A great side effect is killing off the famous idle travel, that empty movement where you just hit end turn waiting for something to happen. If I can identify anomalies from a distance, I make decisions before investing travel turns, and every move becomes a conscious bet. It's the kind of change that seems small, but makes the game's pacing much sharper. What I love most is how it changes my behavior. I start thinking about coverage and the positioning of science ships as a resource just as important as production or science. I can look at a sector, see a potential prize, and decide if it's worth sending a ship now or holding back and going in with more support later. Ultimately, it makes exploration less about patience and more about intention. This hybrid of 4X and RPG is the kind of idea that, for me, turns a space strategy game from just a pretty spreadsheet into an adventure I actually want to live. And the curious thing is that even being a game you find listed on Steam, it tries to lean into this hybrid identity, which isn't the most common path for the genre. When I think of 4X, I think of massive decisions. Expand, explore again, and suddenly you're negotiating or fighting over a border. When I think of an RPG, I think of identity, evolution, and choices that stick to you, like that commander, faction, or style that becomes your signature. Joining the two is like taking the coldness of the board game and injecting personality into the gears. In practice, this changes the way I play because the focus shifts slightly from optimizing production to who am I becoming in this universe? I start remembering moments as if they were chapters, the decision to be the stubborn explorer, the diplomatic leader, or the guy who only survived because he made a questionable pact. That's where the game gains weight, because victory and defeat stop being just numbers and become stories. But there's a risky balance there too. If the RPG elements are too deep, they can swallow the clarity of the 4X. If they're too shallow, they're just window dressing. The sweet spot for me is when the RPG layer gives direction to your strategic choices, instead of just placing random bonuses on the map. What I find most curious here is that despite being an indie, Civirevival appears with fairly high recommended requirements, even mentioning an RTX 4070 or equivalent for playing on high settings. This already gives me that alert of, okay, this game wants to deliver spectacle and heavy calculation at the same time. Honestly, when I see this kind of recommendation, the first thing I imagine is the game filling the screen with effects. Nebulae full of particles, volumetric lighting, that layered stardust that makes the map look serious sci-fi. I love it when it looks beautiful, but I also know that this type of visual usually demands a lot from the PC, especially at higher resolutions. Now, what really explains the heavy load isn't just the shine, it's the technical ambition behind it. Simulation and scale. Large fleet battles with physics, multiple entities, collisions, projectiles, effects, and calculations happening simultaneously tend to eat up CPU and GPU in a way that a more traditional 4X usually doesn't need. If the game is trying to do this live and with density, it makes sense that the recommended specs jump up. The way I view this as a player is very practical. I don't automatically see it as bad optimization. I see it as a sign that the scope is large, and I might need to adjust what I prioritize. Effects, view distance, battle scale. It's worth checking the requirements carefully and aligning expectations before starting a long campaign. And if you love the idea but don't have a machine at that level, you can often find a good middle ground by tweaking the right options and still keeping that epic vibe. This last arc premise is one of those that wins me over in the first second, because it places immediate emotional weight on every decision. It's not just another faction, it's literally the rest of humanity trying to escape extinction and start over from scratch. Within the universe of Civirevival, I find the image of you crossing the void with everything that's left. Technology, memory, culture, very powerful. As if every module of the arc were a piece of our history hanging by a thread. What I like here is how this changes the tone of the 4X. Instead of starting with that energy of let's dominate, you start with let's survive and deserve to exist again. Personally, I start looking at resources and colonies as disguised moral choices. What do I save first? What kind of society do I rebuild? Who do I become when no one is watching and the universe doesn't care about your pain? And this ruins of the stars thing gives it a special flavor because it turns exploration into archaeology. It's not just about uncovering the map, it's about discovering remains, echoes, anomalies, things that look like clues from civilizations that fell before, and that always puts me in that delicious paranoia of, will I repeat the same mistakes? This feeling of walking through a cosmic graveyard makes every victory feel less triumphant and more like, okay, we held on for today. Ultimately, for me, the last arc is a perfect excuse for a game to tell emergent stories with the face of classic science fiction. People trying to maintain hope while making horrible decisions out of necessity. I imagine matches where you become an idealist and pay dearly for it, and others where you become too pragmatic and later don't even recognize what you've built. That's where the premise works. It's not just about rebuilding a civilization, it's about discovering if there's still enough humanity left inside it. What I find coolest about this part is that Civirevival sells the fantasy that you aren't just producing ships, but building a fleet with an identity, almost like a character of your empire. The game's presentation itself highlights this vibe of commanding a personalized fleet, with a focus on dominance and heat-of-the-moment decision-making. The proposal of 5 major fleet classes with very different styles already makes me think of philosophical choices, not just statistics. I've always liked it when a game forces you to decide if you're the guy for control, burst damage, the swarm, the stubborn tank, or the surgeon who wins through precision. It gives that feeling that your playstyle shows up on the map. The 6 functional levels of ships, to me, look like progression with weight. You feel like you're evolving a doctrine, not just swapping numbers. And the sub-factions within each system are that extra seasoning that can transform 2 fleets of the same class into totally different things, as if each carried its own tactical culture. The detail that completes the package is the promise of dominating real-time battles with strategy and precision, because then customization stops being just a menu and becomes execution. I like when a game makes me look at my fleet and think, I built this, so the victory has to have my face too. If this system fits well in the final game, every confrontation becomes a showcase of your style, rather than just another replay of a standard build. This mechanic of the population as the smallest economic and political unit is a design choice that adds layers to the management system. When every pop reacts uniquely to your actions, the game is proposing that governance isn't just about adjusting numbers, but dealing with human variables that have their own behavior. The interesting thing here is that it creates a tension between immediate efficiency and long-term stability. If cultures, ideologies, and values leave marks on the civilization, then decisions that make sense in the moment might generate unexpected consequences later. It's the kind of system that adds unpredictability and forces the player to think beyond pure optimization. This model also opens space for more complex, emergent narratives. The civilization you start building might evolve in unplanned ways as different groups react to your policies. This increases replayability, since every match can result in societies with distinct characteristics based on the specific pressures and choices of that run. In practice, this type of simulation transforms the playing experience. You aren't just managing resources and expanding territory, you are dealing with a social organism that responds and adapts. When well implemented, this makes victories and defeats carry more context, because the final result reflects not only your military or economic strategies, but also how you navigated the demands and transformations of your own population. If you enjoy 4X strategy games, it might be worth taking a look at Civirevival. There's even a demo available. If you like it, add the game to your wish list to support the project.